I also thought I was doing everything right, until I ruined a set of new tires almost without realizing it. Yeah, new. The kind that promises to last for years. For a long time I inflated my tires to 32 psi, just like the sticker on the door says. Obedient, responsible, and completely wrong. The result, money down the drain, terrible handling, and tires worn out like I'd been street racing, which never happened. I bought premium tires for a Corolla, the kind advertised to last 60,000 miles no problem. I checked them every month, rotated them on time, everything perfect. At 18,000 miles, the edges were smooth, dead, while the center was still happily alive. At the shop they looked at me funny. What pressure are you running? 32 psi, what the car says. The technician shook his head. And that's when I realized that sticker doesn't tell you the whole story. Does it make you mad knowing something this simple could be draining your wallet without you noticing? And tell me, did you already check if you left your like? The number you see on the car door isn't the ideal pressure for your tires. It's actually the minimum safe pressure for when the vehicle is loaded to the limit. And this is where the problem starts, something almost nobody explains. Car brands, Toyota, Chevrolet, Nissan, Hyundai, Volkswagen, calculate that number thinking about the worst possible scenario. They picture the car completely full. 5 adults, the trunk packed with suitcases, maybe a huge cooler because, just in case, and also driving on a highway at high speed in intense heat. With that extreme situation in mind, they calculate the minimum pressure so the tires don't suffer or become a risk. That number usually ends up somewhere between 30 and 35 psi. Now tell me something with brutal honesty. How often do you actually drive that loaded? Exactly. Almost never. Daily reality is different. You behind the wheel, maybe one passenger, a backpack, some groceries from the store, and that's it. The car weighs a lot less than its maximum load. And when you use a pressure meant for a heavy car on a nearly empty one, the tire works the wrong way. So what happens? Easy to understand. The tire flattens more than it should. The sidewalls bend too much. The center tread loses real contact with the asphalt, and all the weight goes to the edges. Result, the sides wear out fast, the center still looks new, and you think, these tires were junk. Spoiler, they weren't junk. You were basically suffocating them. That's exactly what happened to me. It wasn't alignment, it wasn't the suspension, it wasn't bad luck. It was the wrong pressure for the car's real weight. So, what's the correct pressure? Here comes the part almost nobody looks at. The answer isn't on the car. It's on the tire. On the sidewall there's a key piece of information. The maximum pressure. Something like max press 51 psi. Or max load 1,400 pounds at 44 psi cold. It doesn't mean you should inflate it to that number. Relax. But it does give you the tire's real design reference. For most compact cars and regular sedans, like a Corolla, Sentra, Jetta, Civic, or Elantra, the pressure that usually balances wear, grip, and fuel economy sits around 10 to 15% below that maximum, adjusting a bit depending on weather and how you drive. And once you understand this, you stop destroying your tires, and they finally start lasting what they promised. In most everyday cars, the correct pressure usually ends up somewhere between 38 and 42 psi. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, that's too much, hard tires are dangerous. That's what we've all heard our whole lives. But the problem is nobody really explained what overinflated actually means. An overinflated tire isn't a tire at 40 psi. An overinflated tire is one that goes past the limit the tire itself allows. If the sidewall says, max 51 psi, and you're running 55, then yeah, that's a problem. But if you're running 40 psi, you're nowhere near the limit. You're not forcing anything. In fact, you're using the tire the way it was designed to work. After destroying my previous tires, I decided to try something different. I put on a new set, on a regular sedan, nothing fancy, and instead of going back to 32 psi, I inflated them to 40 psi. No drama. No fear. Right now I'm already over 35,000 miles with them and the wear is perfect, even from edge to edge. No chewed up sides. No raised center. If they keep going like this, they'll easily reach 70,000 miles, something that used to sound like a myth to me. And here's the part that really hits. In a good way for your wallet. At 32 psi, My average fuel economy was 26.4 miles per gallon. At 40 psi, it went up to 28.1. It doesn't look like much, but that's a real 6.4% improvement. Let's do some simple math. If you drive about 15,000 miles a year and gas is around $3.50 a gallon, that's roughly $130 less in fuel every year. Add the fact that the tires now last 10,000 to 15,000 extra miles, which easily means another $150 saved per year. Altogether, that's close to $300 a year just from inflating your tires properly. No new car, no magic gas, no weird tricks. And there's still a bonus: the way the car drives. With higher pressure, the tire is firmer, the steering responds faster, the car leans less in turns, and everything feels more precise. It's not uncomfortable, it's more controlled. All because I stopped blindly trusting a sticker and started listening to the tires instead. The car feels more planted on the road, more stable, and, most of all, more predictable. Some people say higher pressure makes the ride uncomfortable. And I won't lie, on streets full of potholes it does feel a bit firmer. But on smooth roads or well-maintained highways, the difference is minimal. Nothing dramatic. It's not like sitting on a rock, it's more like switching from an old saggy mattress to a firm one that doesn't sink. Now, before someone runs out with an air compressor and starts pumping their tires like crazy, there are important rules you can't ignore. The first one is sacred. Never go past the maximum pressure written on the tire. That number isn't there for decoration. Exceeding it can cause a serious failure, especially once the tire heats up after driving several miles under the sun. More heat, more pressure, and that's when problems start. Second rule: weight changes everything. If you're driving with a car full of people, luggage, big shopping runs, or even tools, you need more pressure. In those situations, getting closer to what the door sticker says, or a little more, makes sense. More load requires more air so the tire keeps the correct shape. Third, check pressure when the tires are cold. Always. Don't measure it after driving or right off the highway. The best time is in the morning, before you start the car. Heat tricks the gauge and makes it look like you have more air than you really do. Fourth warning: sports cars play by different rules. Vehicles with different tire sizes front and rear, stiff suspensions, and a performance focus usually come with much more precise pressure settings from the factory. You can adjust a little, sure, but don't overdo it. Here it's less guessing and more common sense. And fifth, very important, weather is in charge. Cold air lowers pressure. For about every 10-degree drop in temperature, you lose around 1 psi. If you live somewhere where seasons change a lot, check your tires more often. Winter doesn't play around, and neither do your tires. In short, more pressure isn't the enemy. The real problem is not understanding how much pressure your car needs today, with that weight, in that weather. Once you get it right, the car feels better, uses less fuel, and stops chewing through tires like they're disposable. Now I'm going to break the biggest myth of all, the one that makes millions of people drive around calmly, while their tires are quietly getting ruined. People believe the TPMS light, that yellow icon that looks like a sad horseshoe, warns you when the pressure is wrong. Half true, and the dangerous kind. That system doesn't warn you when the pressure is incorrect for daily driving. It only turns on when the pressure drops about 25% below the recommended level. Translated to real life: if the sticker on your door says 32 psi, the light won't show up until you drop to around 24 psi. That's not a little low. That's driving with your tires almost flattened. By the time you see that light on, you've probably spent weeks punishing the edges of the tire, burning more gas, and increasing your braking risk. TPMS is an emergency alarm, not a maintenance tool. It's like a smoke detector. It doesn't tell you you're cooking badly, it tells you when there's already a fire. That's why tire pressure should be checked manually at least once a month. And here's another uncomfortable truth: those cheap gas station pencil gauges often read all over the place. Don't trust your money or your safety to that. For about $15, you can buy a decent digital gauge and be done with it. It's a tiny investment for something that touches the ground every second. Want to find the ideal pressure for your car and the way you drive? Do this. Start with the number on the door and add 6 psi. If it says 32, try 38. Drive like that for a couple of weeks. Watch the tire wear. If the center wears faster, drop 2 psi.
If the edges wear first, add 2 psi.
Most people end up somewhere between 36 and 42 psi, where tires last longer and fuel economy improves. Keep track of your gas mileage. Most of the time, a little more pressure means better efficiency. And here's something almost nobody talks about. Pressure also affects braking distance. A tire that keeps its proper shape grips the pavement better when you hit the brakes. Less deformation, more control. It's not just about saving money. It's about response when it actually matters. So no, that little light on your dashboard isn't protecting you the way you think. The real difference comes from you, with 5 minutes, a decent gauge, and a bit of common sense. Does it bother you that you trusted that tiny light for so many years? Good. That irritation is the first step to stop losing money. Tires with low pressure create a bigger contact patch, softer and kind of loose.
When you brake hard, that rubber deforms, twists, and loses efficiency.
A tire with the correct pressure, on the other hand, sits more firmly, keeps its shape, and grips the asphalt better. Less flex, more control. In real emergency braking tests, the difference between driving at 30 psi and 40 psi can be 10 to 16 feet when stopping from highway speed. It doesn't sound like much, until that space is exactly the size of the rear end of the car in front of you. It's not theory. It's the difference between stopping in time or rear-ending someone. That's simple.
So the uncomfortable question comes up.
Why do manufacturers still put such low numbers on the sticker inside the door? First, legal responsibility. They protect themselves for the worst possible situation. A fully loaded car, maximum cargo, extreme heat, steady highway speed. They prefer a conservative number that works all the time, even if it's not ideal for everyday driving. Second, comfort. Less pressure makes the car feel softer. And during a test drive, a softer car feels more comfortable, more premium, even if in the long run it punishes the tires and fuel economy. Third, and this one is brutal. They assume most people will never check their tire pressure. They know that, over time, air naturally escapes.
A tire loses about 1 psi per month just through normal permeation, even without punctures or visible leaks.
So if they start with a lower number, months later it will still be safe, even if it's already far from ideal. In other words, the sticker isn't designed to protect your wallet or your tires. It's designed to protect them, and to make sure you don't notice anything strange in the first few minutes behind the wheel. And now that you know this, you can't pretend you didn't know.
Does it annoy you?
Good. That irritation means you just learned something almost nobody explains. If you inflate to 32 psi and completely forget about it, 6 months later you're already driving around 26 psi. A year later, without even noticing, you could be down to 20 psi. That's how millions of people drive every day with tires that are basically underinflated, convinced that everything is fine because the car still moves. And no, it's not that they're careless. It's that nobody ever explained it to them. The simple truth is this: the number on the door is a starting point, not a target. It's the minimum acceptable pressure for an extreme situation, not the ideal pressure for your real daily use. The correct pressure depends on how you drive, what type of tires you run, the climate where you live, and what matters most to you: tire life, fuel economy, or how the car responds. For most people driving normal cars, sedans, compacts, crossovers, under normal conditions, the sweet spot usually sits between 38 and 42 psi. In that range, tires wear evenly, fuel economy improves, the steering responds better, and the car feels more stable. Yes, the suspension feels a little firmer, but the benefits easily outweigh that small detail. If this video just saved you from destroying a set of tires that costs hundreds, or even thousands, of dollars, check if you already left your like and subscribe, because here we talk about those truths in the automotive world that almost nobody tells you. Because the right tire pressure is free performance, free savings, and extra life for your tires. And now, you know how to get it. Finding a good tire is only half the problem. The real challenge is finding a shop that doesn't try to sell you things you don't need. Here I show you brands and options that many big tire shops would rather keep quiet about. But now I want to do something even more important with this channel. A lot of people write to me asking where they can take their car without getting ripped off. So let's help each other out. Write in the comments the name of a shop you trust and your city. Let's build a real guide, made by drivers, of places that work with honesty and professionalism. No nonsense and no shady tricks.
Now let me ask you,
Where do you take your car that you trust with your eyes closed?